My beloved child, be still for just this moment, because something quietly beautiful has already begun moving toward you while the world around you remains unaware. You have walked through ordinary days believing that nothing remarkable was happening behind the curtain of your life, yet there are moments that begin in complete silence before they reshape everything. This is one of those moments. A single page, folded with extraordinary care, has been resting where almost no one expected to find it. It was never written to impress a crowd. It was never meant to become a story shared by many voices. Every word on it carried one destination, one hope, one name, yours. Before this moment continues, don't skip, because what unfolds next may help you understand why certain pieces of your journey have never seemed to fit until now. Sometimes the greatest answers are not hidden because they wish to stay secret. They remain hidden because the right heart has not yet arrived to receive them. Listen closely, because the quiet has begun speaking. Far away from where you stand today, your soulmate found themselves remembering you once again, not through coincidence, but through countless little moments that refuse to disappear. A familiar melody. A passing conversation. A place they had never connected to you before. Every small reminder gently led them back to the same thought. They realized that some feelings do not fade with time. Instead, they grow quieter until they become impossible to ignore. That realization stayed with them for many evenings before they reached for a blank sheet of paper. They paused several times before writing the first sentence, wondering whether words could ever carry emotions that had been living inside them for so long. Yet once the first line appeared, the rest followed naturally, almost as though their heart had been waiting years for permission to speak honestly. The letter was unlike anything they had written before. It did not promise impossible things. It did not try to sound perfect. Instead, every sentence carried simple truths. They wrote about the peace they felt whenever your presence entered their thoughts. They admitted that certain dreams no longer felt complete unless you somehow existed within them. They confessed that life had quietly changed because of someone they could not easily explain to others. There was no performance. No disguise. Only sincerity. Sometimes the simplest words become the most unforgettable because they ask for nothing except to be understood. Something important is waiting for you as this story unfolds, because that letter became much more than ink resting on paper. Days passed, and the letter remained carefully hidden among personal belongings that rarely attracted attention. Your soulmate believed the message would stay safely tucked away until the perfect time arrived. Yet life has a remarkable way of creating unexpected turns without causing chaos. On this particular day, a family gathering filled the home with gentle conversation, warm laughter, and familiar memories. Shelves were dusted. Drawers were organized. Old keepsakes were opened simply to revisit forgotten moments. Nobody was searching for secrets. Nobody expected to uncover anything extraordinary. They were only making room for new memories while smiling at old ones. Then, almost without intention, someone reached toward a small envelope resting beneath a stack of carefully folded papers. For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. The envelope looked ordinary, almost invisible among everything surrounding it. But something about the handwriting encouraged a second glance. Another family member leaned closer. Curiosity remained gentle, respectful, almost innocent. They hesitated before opening it, uncertain whether they should continue. Then one quiet voice softly said that perhaps it belonged to someone important. Those words changed the atmosphere inside the room. Suddenly, everyone sensed that what rested inside those folded pages mattered more than anyone first imagined. As the letter slowly unfolded, silence replaced conversation. The room that had been full of cheerful sounds became unexpectedly still. Not because anyone felt shock or disappointment, but because genuine affection has a way of asking people to pause. Every sentence revealed another glimpse into your soulmate's heart. Every paragraph carried warmth that could not be mistaken for anything else. Family members looked at one another without speaking, realizing they were witnessing emotions that had been carefully protected for a long time. Some smiled quietly. Others lowered their eyes for a moment, reflecting on how deeply someone can care without announcing it to the world. No one hurried through the pages. Every line deserved its own moment. Then something unusual happened. Near the bottom of the final page, written almost like a private reminder to themselves, your soulmate had included one sentence they never expected anyone else to read. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It simply said that if life ever created the right moment, they hoped this letter would somehow reach you before the feelings inside it faded into another season of waiting. Those words settled gently into every heart present. Suddenly, the family understood that this wasn't merely a letter. It was hope preserved in written form. But the story doesn't stop there. As one family member carefully lifted the page toward the light coming through the window, they noticed something almost invisible beginning to happen. Tiny portions of the handwriting appeared softer than before, as though time itself had quietly begun reclaiming the ink. Nobody understood why. Perhaps it was the paper. Perhaps it was the light. Perhaps it was simply a reminder that some moments ask to be treasured before they quietly pass. One voice whispered that they should protect the letter immediately before any more of it disappeared. Stay till the end, because the next part begins with a choice that none of them expected to make, and the decision they reach will bring your name into the center of every conversation. The room remained wrapped in a silence that felt strangely comforting, as though every heartbeat had become part of the conversation. No one rushed to fold the letter away. No one laughed to break the moment. Instead, every member of your soulmate's family looked at those fading words with quiet respect, sensing that they were standing in front of something that could never be recreated once it disappeared. One of them gently whispered, "Some messages are written only once in a lifetime." The others nodded without realizing they had all been thinking the same thing. Don't skip, because what happened next revealed far more than anyone expected. Your soulmate had no idea that this discovery was unfolding. They were somewhere else, carrying on with an ordinary day, unaware that the deepest part of their heart had quietly stepped into the light. There is something remarkable about sincere love. It often speaks the loudest when the person who feels it is not even present. While they continued with simple routines, their family began seeing them through completely different eyes. They remembered little moments they had overlooked before, the unexpected smile whenever your name was mentioned, the thoughtful silence after certain conversations, the way hope seemed to return for no obvious reason. Tiny memories that once seemed ordinary suddenly fit together like pieces of a picture that had always existed. One family member carefully reread the opening lines of the letter. Every sentence carried patience instead of urgency. Every word reflected admiration instead of expectation. It was not asking for anything. It was simply expressing gratitude that someone like you existed somewhere in the world. That realization touched everyone in the room. They understood that this was not a passing emotion. It had quietly become part of your soulmate's future long before anyone else noticed. Then another folded page slipped gently from inside the envelope. For a brief moment, nobody reached for it. They simply stared, surprised that there had been another page hidden beneath the first all along. It looked different. The handwriting was softer, almost hesitant, as though these words had been written after many pauses and deep breaths. When the page was opened, the room grew even quieter. The first sentence read, "If this letter ever reaches the people I love before it reaches the person it was written for, I hope they will understand why my heart never stopped believing." Those words settled into every heart like morning light entering a quiet home. No one felt the need to interrupt. No one questioned those feelings. Instead, they continued reading together, discovering thoughts your soulmate had never spoken aloud. The letter described ordinary dreams made extraordinary simply because they included you. Sitting together without needing endless conversation. Watching sunsets that neither person wanted to leave too quickly. Laughing over forgotten stories years from now. Growing older while still finding reasons to smile at each other. Nothing about the future sounded impossible. It sounded peaceful. Real. Gentle. And somehow that simplicity made every sentence even more powerful. Something important is waiting for you, because the family was beginning to understand that love is not always revealed through grand gestures. Sometimes it quietly prepares a place long before anyone arrives there. One older relative smiled warmly and said, "Whoever this person is, they have already changed our family without even knowing us." The room became still again. Those simple words lingered in the air far longer than anyone expected. Everyone realized they had already begun imagining the day they might finally meet you. They wondered what kind of kindness had inspired such honest writing. They wondered what conversations might one day fill this home. They wondered whether you even knew that someone had carried these feelings so carefully for so long. Meanwhile, something almost impossible to notice continued happening. The edges of the ink grew lighter. Not dramatically. Not all at once. Just enough for everyone to realize that time was quietly moving forward. One family member immediately reached for a transparent folder to protect the pages. Another suggested making a copy before more words disappeared. But before anyone could decide, an elderly voice gently interrupted. "No." Everyone turned. The oldest member of the family slowly smiled and said, "Some things are never meant to live forever on paper. They are meant to live forever in the hearts of the people who read them." Those words changed the atmosphere completely. Instead of worrying about preserving every letter, they began preserving every feeling. Each person repeated their favorite sentence aloud so it would never be forgotten. One remembered the promise of quiet mornings together. Another remembered the gratitude written between the lines. Someone else remembered the hope that refused to disappear despite the passing seasons. Without realizing it, the family had become guardians of a message far greater than the paper itself. Then an unexpected detail caught someone's attention. Near the bottom corner of the second page was a tiny handwritten note that everyone had overlooked. It wasn't addressed to the family. It wasn't even part of the letter. It appeared to be a private reminder your soulmate had written only for themselves. It simply said, "If the day ever comes when they are finally close enough to hear my heart, don't let this letter be the first thing they discover. Let my actions tell the story before these words ever do." For several long seconds, nobody spoke. The family exchanged quiet smiles filled with understanding. They realized your soulmate had never wanted impressive words to win your heart. They wanted kindness, patience, consistency, and genuine presence to speak first. The letter had only been a witness to feelings that already existed. Stay till the end, because just as everyone believed the mystery had reached its most meaningful moment, a gentle knock echoed at the front door, and the person standing outside carried something that would connect your name to the letter in a way none of them could have imagined. A soft breeze slipped through the hallway just as the knock came again, almost as though even the house itself was waiting to see who had arrived. Every conversation faded. The letter remained carefully resting on the table, protected now not because of its paper, but because of everything it had awakened. One family member walked slowly toward the front door while the others remained where they were, their thoughts still wrapped around the words they had just read. Something important is waiting for you, because the next few moments would connect pieces of a story that had been separated for far longer than anyone realized. The door opened to reveal an elderly neighborhood courier with a warm smile. In his hands was a small wooden keepsake box, polished by time rather than perfection. He looked around for a moment before saying quietly, "I believe this belongs here. It has been waiting much longer than it should have." No one recognized the box immediately. There was no elaborate decoration, no expensive design, only a simple carving of two small branches gently meeting in the center. Yet the moment it was placed into the hands of your soulmate's family, something felt familiar. They thanked him, closed the door, and carried the box back to the table where the fading letter still rested. For a few quiet seconds, nobody reached for the lid. It was as though they all understood that opening it would begin another chapter they could never unread. Finally, the oldest member of the family gently lifted the lid. Inside rested several small keepsakes collected across different seasons of life. A pressed flower carefully preserved between thin sheets of paper. A faded movie ticket. A tiny ribbon tied into a careful knot. None of these items seemed extraordinary by themselves. Until they noticed one folded card lying beneath them all. It carried the same handwriting. Your soulmate's handwriting. A younger family member carefully unfolded it, expecting another letter. Instead, it contained only a few simple lines. "I kept these reminders because they helped me believe that genuine connections deserve patience. One day, when the timing finally feels right, I hope these memories will become the beginning of new ones." Everyone looked at the keepsakes again. Suddenly, they understood. None of these objects were valuable because of what they were. They were valuable because they represented hope that had quietly survived ordinary days. One relative smiled gently and whispered, "This wasn't someone waiting for a perfect future. This was someone preparing their heart for it." Those words settled warmly into the room. Then another surprise appeared. Hidden beneath the ribbon was a tiny folded piece of paper no larger than a bookmark. It contained a short list. Not a shopping list. Not reminders. A list titled, "When I Finally Meet Them." Everyone leaned closer. The first line read, "I hope I remember to smile before I speak." The second, "I hope they feel comfortable enough to be completely themselves." The third. I hope they never feel they have to earn kindness from me. Silence returned. Every sentence felt gentle. Every hope felt genuine. No one found dramatic promises. No impossible expectations. Only quiet intentions from someone who wished to make another person feel seen, valued, and safe. Don't skip. Because something no one expected happened next. One family member suddenly remembered a conversation from months earlier. Your soulmate had once paused during dinner, looked out the window for a long moment, and quietly said, "Sometimes I feel like someone I've never met has already changed the way I think about tomorrow." At the time, everyone had smiled politely without asking questions. Now, those words made complete sense. The family realized this story had not begun with the letter. It had been unfolding for much longer. The letter was only the first page they had accidentally discovered. As the afternoon light slowly moved across the room, they returned their attention to the original letter. More of the ink had become faint. Entire words were now barely visible. Yet something remarkable happened. Nobody felt sadness. Instead, they noticed they could still remember nearly every sentence. The paper was fading. The message wasn't. The oldest member of the family quietly closed the wooden box and said, "Perhaps this was never meant to be preserved in drawers. Perhaps it was meant to live through the people who carry it forward." Everyone agreed. Then, almost naturally, the conversation turned toward you. Not with questions. With curiosity. What kind of smile do you think they have? I wonder if they know how deeply they are appreciated. I hope life has been kind to them. I hope they never stopped believing in meaningful connections. Without meeting you. Without knowing your voice. Without hearing your story. Your soulmate's family had already begun holding you in warm regard because they had witnessed the honesty with which you were loved. Outside, evening slowly approached. Inside, the house felt different than it had that morning. It was no longer simply a family home. It had quietly become a place carrying hope for someone who had not yet walked through its front door. Then, just as everyone prepared to carefully return the keepsakes to the box, one final discovery caught their attention. Hidden beneath the lining at the very bottom was an envelope so thin that it had remained invisible until now. Across the front, in careful handwriting, were only 7 simple words. Open only when the timing finally feels right. No date. No name. No explanation. The family looked at one another. Should they open it now? Or had the real moment it was waiting for not arrived yet? The answer to that question changes everything, and what they decide in the next part will reveal the one message your soulmate never imagined anyone else would ever read. Morning arrived with a quiet glow that seemed to rest gently upon the home, as though the new day already knew what everyone inside had yet to decide. The unopened envelope remained exactly where it had been placed the evening before. No one had touched it. No one had tried to guess what was inside. Instead, your soulmate's family had chosen something unexpected. They would wait. They believed that if every other part of this story had unfolded with perfect timing, then this final message deserved the same patience. Stay till the end, because the last piece of this journey is not hidden inside paper alone. It has been quietly growing inside every heart that has encountered it. As the family gathered once more, the oldest among them smiled softly and said, sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when not to rush. Those words settled over the room like gentle sunlight. Everyone understood. The envelope had become more than an object. It represented trust. Trust that meaningful things arrive when they are ready, not when they are forced. Then your soulmate returned home. The moment they stepped through the doorway, they sensed that something had changed. The house was peaceful, yet every familiar face carried an expression they had never seen before. There were warm smiles, knowing eyes, and a quiet kindness that needed no explanation. Your soulmate looked from one family member to another and asked with a gentle laugh, "What happened while I was away?" For a few seconds, nobody answered. Then the wooden keepsake box was placed carefully into their hands. Your soulmate immediately recognized it. Their smile faded into thoughtful silence. Slowly, they opened the lid. The folded letter rested exactly where they had left it, though the ink had grown noticeably lighter. They gently touched the paper, understanding immediately what had happened. Instead of embarrassment, they simply closed their eyes for a moment and smiled, a smile filled not with regret, but with acceptance. One family member quietly said, "We didn't discover a secret. We discovered your heart." Those words lingered in the room. Your soulmate looked around and realized that no one was judging them. No one questioned why they had written the letter. Instead, they saw compassion, encouragement, and understanding reflected in every face. Then the oldest family member reached for the unopened envelope. Without opening it, they placed it back into your soulmate's hands. "This," they said gently, "still belongs to the moment it was written for." Your soulmate looked down at the envelope for a long time before speaking. "I always hoped these words would reach the right person one day," they whispered. "But I never imagined they would first remind my own family what genuine love looks like." Silence returned once again. Not an empty silence. A peaceful one. It was then that your soulmate carefully opened the envelope. Inside was only a single sheet of paper. No long letter. No dramatic confession. Just one beautifully written paragraph. It read, "If you are reading this, it means time has carried us farther than I once imagined. Whether we have already met or whether our paths are still gently moving toward one another, I hope one thing remains true. I hope you never doubted that you were worthy of a love built on patience, honesty, laughter, quiet mornings, meaningful conversations, and unwavering respect. If our journey is meant to cross, I promise to greet you with an open heart. And if that day is still ahead, then I will continue becoming the kind of person who is ready to recognize you when it arrives." No one spoke after those words. No one needed to. Every sentence carried a quiet strength that filled the room with hope. Then something remarkable happened. The original love letter, resting beside the envelope, became almost impossible to read. The ink had faded until only faint traces remained. Yet no one felt that anything had been lost. Because every important word had already found a place where fading was impossible. It now lived in memory. It lived in conversations. It lived in renewed hope. It lived in the quiet belief that sincere love is never measured by how loudly it announces itself, but by how faithfully it remains true over time. Your soulmate carefully folded every page, placed them back inside the wooden box, and closed the lid with a peaceful smile. The box was returned to its shelf. Not hidden away forever, but preserved as a reminder that some of life's most meaningful chapters begin long before anyone realizes they have started. And somewhere beyond that home, your story continued to unfold at its own steady pace. Perhaps today you are still walking through ordinary moments. Perhaps you are wondering why certain paths have taken longer than expected. Perhaps you have questioned whether quiet hope is worth holding on to. If so, remember this gentle truth. The most meaningful connections are rarely rushed. They grow through kindness. They deepen through patience. They endure through sincerity. Long after ink disappears, genuine care continues to leave its mark. And that is why this story was never truly about a letter that faded within 5 minutes. It was about a love so genuine that even when the words disappeared, the message remained brighter than ever, carried not by paper, but by hearts that chose to remember.